The Trump administration has previously declared that Christians in Iraq were the victims of the genocide at the hands of the Islamic State terrorist group. Win McNamee, Getty Images. Foreign policy. The issue has gained attention after Michigan resident Jimmy Al-Dowd died following his deportation to Iraq. By NAHALTOOSI, August 25, 2019, 7:08 a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Long before Jimmy Al-Dowd died in Baghdad, an activist trying to stop President Donald Trump from deporting Christians like Al-Dowd to Iraq hit on an idea: what if the U.S. could deport him to a different, safer country? Steve Ashana raised the suggestion with several people in the Trump administration, pointing out that Christians face discrimination and persecution in Iraq. He offered up his preferred alternative, Christian-majority Armenia, whose officials had signaled to him that they'd be willing to consider taking the deportees. Story continued below, but the idea got nowhere, even though he ran it by White House advisors, State Department officials and figures in the Department of Homeland Security. Ashana was still pushing the option when word came earlier this month that Al-Dowd had died. The 41-year-old Michigan resident had been sent to Iraq in June despite speaking no Arabic and having spent nearly his entire life in the United States. He is thought to have died because he couldn't get the insulin he needed for his diabetes. "I feel so guilty about what happened to Jimmy," said Ashana, executive director of the Christian advocacy group A Demand for Action. "I don't know if we could have done anything more looking back at all this, but it's hard not to kick yourself wondering if anything else was possible." Ashana's experience offers a glimpse into Trump's hardline stance on deportations, in which people who in the past were deemed relatively low priorities to deport are now being removed from the U.S. It also reveals how hard it is for even well-connected advocates to navigate the system amid the crackdown. Ashana still wants the Trump administration to consider the third country option for the hundreds of other Christians in the U.S. currently facing deportation to Iraq. He expects it will be a struggle. The biggest impediment is the administration not making the request to another country and not even being willing to discuss it with us in a meaningful way. Ashana said, "When we make an inquiry, it goes nowhere. The State Department and the White House would not say if the administration was or has ever seriously considered the third country option for Iraqi deportees." They referred requests for comment on this report to the Department of Homeland Security. Rep. Andy Levin is spearheading legislative efforts to halt virtually all deportations to Iraq. Carolyn Castor, App Photo Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the DHS division that carries out deportations, did not directly answer a question about the third country option. It noted in a statement that federal immigration law provides robust procedures for aliens to challenge their removal from the United States before an immigration judge emails. Texts and other documents seen by Politico show that Ashana initially reached out to several Trump administration officials in 2017 to discuss the third country idea. "I would love to speak with you about this," Ashana read to one official. "Their deportation appears to be imminent and I want to make sure they're not dumped in Baghdad where they're almost certainly going to be harmed." Within the White House, Ashana approached Gary Hall, then a senior National Security Council official, and Victoria Coates, another NSC official who now deals with Middle East issues. He also spoke to Barbara Gonzalez, an ICE official, according to notes from the session. None would offer comment for this report. Ashana says he also raised the idea to administration officials focused on religious freedom issues, hoping they'd lend a sympathetic ear. In June 2017, Ashana and fellow activists scored a meeting with NSC officials, including Hall, and they used the get-together to bring up the third country option. In the meantime, Ashana said he was also discussing the possibility with various officials from Armenia. The country, which has a population of around 3 million, is relatively poor, but it has a history of accepting vulnerable Christian refugees. The Armenians did not rule out the idea, Ashana said. But they noted that diplomatic protocol required that the United States be the first to raise the topic with them. Ashana isn't sure if the Trump administration ever approached Armenia or any other country about accepting the deportees. A former White House official said the suggestion didn't go past the June 2017 meeting, at least not in the NSC. In 2018, Ashana temporarily laid aside the third country idea as he and other activists focused instead on pursuing legal challenges to the deportations. The court cases largely halted the deportations that year. But in April, a federal court effectively gave the go-ahead on the deportations, and within weeks it became clear the administration would be carrying them out. Ashana began asking around again about the third country option. In mid-June, he sent an email to the White House asking for another meeting on the topic. He said he never heard back. By signing up, you agree to receive email newsletters or alerts from Politico. You can unsubscribe at any time. By that point, al-Daud had already been deported to Iraq. ICE removed him from the U.S. in early June without letting him contact his family. They dropped him in Najaf, a Shiite Muslim stronghold in Iraq with few Christians. Al-Daud made his way to Baghdad, but he was clearly in physical and mental distress, supporters said. U.S. officials have previously stressed that al-Daud was deported because of his criminal record, which included convictions for assault with a dangerous weapon, domestic violence, theft of personal property and breaking and entering. Al-Daud supporters argued that he had mental health problems that may have contributed to his criminal record and which also often left him homeless in the U.S. None of his crimes justified a deportation to Iraq, they insisted. Like other Christians facing deportation, many of whom also have criminal records, al-Daud never obtained U.S. citizenship. He is believed to have been born in Greece to Iraqi refugees who came to the U.S. while he was a baby. He grew up in the Detroit area. It's unclear if U.S. officials considered sending al-Daud to Greece, but he didn't have Greek citizenship, and Athens would likely not have taken him. At least 16 Iraqi nationals have been deported to the country since the April court decision, legal advocates say. The overall number of people deported to Iraq since Trump took office, non-Christians included, is believed to be more than 100. Iraq for many years refused to accept Iraqi nationals facing deportation from the U.S. Past presidential administrations also hesitated to repatriate the people involved given the dangerous conditions in the Middle Eastern country, which the U.S. invaded in 2003. The Trump administration told Iraq that it had to accept the deportees if it didn't want to be one of the countries subject to the president's 2017 travel ban, which would have barred most Iraqis from entering the United States. Iraq reluctantly agreed. Sending a deportee to a country other than that of their national origin is not standard practice for the United States, but it's not without precedent. The move depends heavily on whether a third country can be found to accept the person. Though not a direct parallel, the cases of Uyghur Muslim detainees held at the military prison in Guantanamo Bay offers one prior example. Nearly 24 Uyghurs were held for years, even after judges determined they were not a threat to the United States. Yet sending them back to their homeland, China, was not an option because of Beijing's widely reported oppression of the Uyghur Muslim community. As the years went on, the U.S. managed to persuade several other places, including Albania, Bermuda and Switzerland, to take the Uyghurs. Armenian government officials either did not respond to requests for comment about Al-Dawd's case or said they did not know if U.S. officials had been in touch about taking deportees. One official said that while Armenia typically only accepts Armenian citizens as deportees, taking in non-citizens would be a political decision made at higher levels. Nadine Yusuf Kalasho, an attorney who represents Iraqi nationals targeted for deportation, said the third country option has always been a backup possibility for clients who lose the court fight. Several of the would-be deportees open to the idea, she said. If they could pick any other country where the conditions were a little better, I think that they could choose it, Kalasho said, adding that she'd thought about finding a way to get Al-Dawd to a third country even after he was already dropped off in Iraq. Another option that activists floated is convincing the U.S. to send the Christian deportees directly to Erbil, a city in the Kurdish region of Iraq that is considered safer for them. The Kurdish regional government's representative in Washington, Bayan Sami Abdul Rahman, said no U.S. officials have approached her office about that idea, nor is she aware of U.S. representatives talking to other Iraqi Kurdish leaders about it. She did not rule out the proposal but said it would require Kurdish authorities to talk to Washington and Baghdad, and that it would be a lengthy and complicated process. The deportation cases of Iraqi Christians have gotten significant notice because of that community's unique vulnerability. The Trump administration itself has declared that Christians in Iraq were the victims of the genocide at the hands of the Islamic State terrorist group. And in an odd political twist, many U.S. citizens of Iraqi Christian descent voted for Trump, citing his pledge to protect religious minorities. But there are other religious and ethnic minorities in the U.S. facing potentially dangerous deportations to Iraq, including Kurds and Shiite Muslims. Rep. Andy Levin, D. Mitch, is spearheading legislative efforts to halt virtually all deportations to Iraq. When asked about the third country option, Levin said that's not a focus for him because his priority is to end the removals instead. While Levin noted the obvious humanitarian issues involved, he also stressed fiscal arguments in hopes of convincing Trump to stop the deportations. It costs a lot of money to deport people, he said. Whether you're going to Armenia, or Erbil or Baghdad or Najaf. This whole thing is a colossal waste of money, Levin said. Many of the other people deported to Iraq are in dire straits, with some at risk of committing suicide. His office, meanwhile, is working with Iraqi authorities to bring back Al-Dawd's body for burial in the United States. Ted Hesson contributed to this report. This article tagged under "Missing Out on the Latest Scoops." Sign up for Politico Playbook and get the latest news every morning in your inbox. Show comments, let's block ads. Why?